It's 11 p.m. on the 13th of October 2023. My markers have become nearly exhausted. The Luton Airport fire, folks. The Luton Airport fire. After a very mild period of weather here in rural Ireland, though there's a north wind. It's blowing straight down from the north and it is cold. Now, to say that this has nothing to do with climate is a bit of an exaggeration. It's because the way the wind is blowing, mainly. It's not a strong wind. It's strong. It's good enough. It is very cold if you had to do anything. I had to do a job with a car. I had to get down under it yesterday, and I was very lucky. I got it finished. Today it would skin you. I don't think I'd nearly be able to stick the coal today low down on the ground. Anyway, we're dealing with the Luton Fire. Now, first off, it was a Land Rover. And some people have various ideas about Land Rover, but I think the modern Land Rover is not a good car or Jeep or whatever. It's either a Land Rover Sport or a Land Rover Evoque. It's probably 2021 model, give or take a year either side. I think, note where I use probable or otherwise. I'm sure it's a Land Rover. On the balance of probability, it's a Land Rover Sport. But there is a possibility it's a Land Rover Evoque. I'm basing that on the back headlights. The second point is my earlier report, folks, from Canary News, Canary Weekly, that it was a Tesla that was charging, I think is wrong. I don't think that's what happened. I really don't. So now that has to be withdrawn. It wasn't a Tesla electric car that was charging on the top story. The car that caused this fire was photographed and videoed, and it's there to be seen on the internet. There's no point in me showing it. And it's not in a car parking bay. The car was driven up as if it was going to get a parking place, probably someone taking a flight or meeting somebody, and it went on fire en route. It was not parked and went on fire. It went on fire as it was being driven into or out from the airport, probably into the airport. The owner abandoned it, left the lights on it, and possibly the engine running. It's more likely a Range Rover Sport, but it could be a Range Rover Evoque. But the Sport is the one I would go for. Please bear with me. I'm a little bit uncertain about that. The Range Rover, both of these cars, come in, apparently there are some petrols, but this one is unlikely to be a petrol. It's a diesel, but they come in simple diesel and they come in diesel hybrid, as they now call them, bisexual. They come as diesel hybrids. Where there is a diesel hybrid, I presume if there's a petrol hybrid, I don't know. I can't answer that. But where there's a diesel, and I think I go along with the fire officer, it was a diesel engine was in the car. But where there is a diesel hybrid Sport or Evoque, the battery is not all over the bottom like a full electric car. There's a small battery taking up about a quarter of the space of a full electric car, and it was underneath the passenger seat. The diagram of this car is the battery is underneath the seat. It's about equal in area to the full seat bay of the car. Okay. Now, some of these Range Rover diesels will go on fire. And one of the problems is something I made a video on a week ago, is the DPF filter, the diesel particulates filter. Sometimes if you're driving them and they decide to regenerate, particularly if you're going along their journey and you park them, they're still regenerating. There's still a fire in the exhaust. This is meant to save particulates when you're driving, but then you have to burn it out of it by a regeneration process, which seems to me to defeat the purpose. Also, most of the manufacturers recommend you drive for at least 3/4 of an hour at high speed in a low gear, which defeats a lot of the purpose of reducing emissions and everything else. I did a video on that. Please check it if you have one. You don't always have to change the filter. You can change the injector. In many models there's a fifth pipe going to the injector for the DPF filter. That's a possibility. Some of the Range Rovers have gone on fire up at the dash due to various problems, and I think that one of them has some type of a plastic rubber outlet that touches the exhaust pipe going out, and that can be a fire hazard. However, what can be said is the flames and the fumes from this fire are going out at a high speed. They're yellow with a touch of orange, and there's not that much smoke. Remember that batteries, lithium-ion batteries, have their own oxygen, and they don't need oxygen from the air. The way that car is burning is not typical of how diesel burns. If it's not an EV, then it's the rubber pipes that burn. It's rubber. Did you ever see car tires burning, or anyone burning tires? I remember when they used to burn them in the fields, and you get this thick black smoke, thick red, yellow flame. But there's not that much smoke in this case. There really isn't. So I think it's not rubber. Diesel is very hard to ignite. The flash point of diesel is 52 degrees centigrade. It's not like petrol. In fact, I might do it sometime. You can put a lighted match into diesel. It'll light on a fire. If it gets on papers, it will burn. But it's not a very volatile substance. Not very much. And fire extinguishers work on it. It appears the driver of this car went for a fire extinguisher. There was a wasted one about, and then the whole lot went up. Now there is a grey area. I just want to bring it to your attention. The chances of this being an EV battery that went on fire is about 50-50 or a bit more. There's a 12-volt battery in some cars now, and they tell me that there's a lithium-ion battery instead of the lead acid battery in ordinary cars, in ordinary ICE cars, internal combustion cars. That's something to look for. If there is, it's a bit dodgy. But the volume of a hybrid battery compared with a power tool, for example, is much bigger. And a full electric car has a much bigger battery, increasing the likelihood of fire runaway, what they call thermal runaway. So I'm not answering your question. I am correcting my earlier video that the Tesla charging seems to be out. So my channel is all about bringing whatever we have to my viewers. It's not about proving I'm right or wrong or anything like that. There was no sprinkler system in this car park. It was built on the cheap. And the other thing, the fire officer and everyone else, when these happens, they are at an undue haste, like a religion, to make sure that EVs are not blamed. So there's a conspiracy of silence. There are, to my opinion, over 55% of the United Kingdom population, about 60% of the Irish, and Europe it's about 50%, and the Americans is about 45%, who have taken to the religion of the woke climate religion. And if they're members of that, you don't have to sign them up. They're automatic members. If there's the slightest talk of their beautiful dream of electric utopia being under threat, they will automatically deny and change the story or paint it in whatever way. If they can say it's definitely not an electric car, they'll blow it loud and clear. If they can't, they'll say it's a diesel, but the diesel has a battery. They won't tell you that. And if it's an electric car, they'll shut up altogether and they'll never talk about it again. There has to be an owner of this car. Where is the person who is driving that car? Can they not come forward and make it clear what make the car is? The number is not legible. If it were, it could be checked. Now, I hope I've given you a decent account. I think it is. I know it's a Land Rover. I think it's a sport. I know they're available in hybrid with the battery precisely where the flames are shooting out in the video. But to say that it is that and not rubber, it's not diesel. What's burning there is not diesel fuel. To say it's not a rubber hose or something is just not fully possible. The pipes from the tank is an up pipe that brings the fuel up, and there's a return pipe that brings the fuel back. In fact, it looks in the video that the engine is still running, and that would mean that the fuel oil is running properly. It's strange. Even as you look at that video, how did it engulf everywhere else? How did all the other ones take off? I cannot answer you. Could it be that another car went on fire? Or could it be that the Tesla thing is not wrong, that it's right, that there was the two simultaneously? There's fires all over the place. There was a big one in Scotland with Volkswagen electric cars, and there's other ones. And I'm very worried that these fires are going to happen on a ferry where the passengers cannot get off. That is my worry. And I know for an absolute fact that the British government, the Irish government, and the European Union, as far as they can, and as far as the United States is democratically run in some states and cities, they will never do anything to change the glory, virtue signalling and advertising of electric cars. Not with 1 or 2 or 3 dead. I would say it would take something like 30 to 35 to 40 people to die. And that's the way sacrifice works. That's how the Christian religion took off. There was a sacrifice, and that convinced people it was just more than somebody talking. And when the sacrifice in human life is paid, then the government and the people that have power will come around and they'll try and do something and issue a warning. The other thing I'm 100% sure of, nobody will ever be made accountable, ever be made accountable for any loss of life or any breach of health and safety regulations or anything else. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and I hope I've added a little bit to your knowledge of this fire. Thankfully, nobody died, nobody is badly hurt, so I'm a very happy man. Thank you very much.